Hello, everyone. You are back with Deanna and Dana having a lovely conversation about what it means to be in quarantine during this lovely global pandemic. Hi, Dana. How are you?
Hanging in there.
Hey, yeah, good response.
I feel like that's the best response you can is like, I'm hanging in there and I'm doing the best I can.
And Dana and I had a brief little conversation before we started recording this. And one of the things that you had said is it's not only just day by day, it's minute by minute. And literally every minute things can change. And I've definitely been experiencing that in these past 7-ish weeks or so of there'll be a moment when I feel like, okay, like we're coming out of this, things feel good. And then another moment of just deep depression and sadness and worry and anxiety and guilt and fear and just feeling that like the dark, heavy clouds coming over.
Yes, I feel that in multiple levels in my body, my brain, like everywhere. It's just, it's it's really tough to hold the space for all of the emotions that we're going through right now. Diving right in here, especially if you're one of those people who tends to either not process your emotions very well, whether it was just not something that you were taught when you were younger, or you don't like going through your emotions, so you tend to push those aside. I tend to be in both of those camps. So it's really hard when it feels like, okay, I acknowledge that, like, it's better for my long-term health for me to process through emotions rather than to numb them out or run away from them. But at the same time, I feel like if I even process some of the emotions that are coming up right now, let alone all of them, I'm either going to go into a deep depression or have a panic attack. And I don't want to go to either of those corners. So it's like, so what do we do?
Yeah. I can completely relate to that. And it sometimes just feels like even wanting to process any of the emotion is so exhausting and overwhelming. And the emotions, I think, too, are different than they've been before. I think we're really being forced to face parts of ourselves that we haven't before, and in a way that we haven't experienced before. I mean, I don't think any of us have actually, even I and you who work from home, I don't know if any of us have actually had this amount of time at home in like spaciousness, in just like we've got all of this time and all of this ability to just do whatever we want for the most part. And it's uncomfortable. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
uncomfortable.
And it's really uncomfortable whether you live alone or you live with people, because each of them comes with their own challenges. Like if you live alone, you feel very lonely like all the time. Even if you're an introvert. I like to think of myself as like kind of half and half, with more on the introvert side, but like I love being alone and I'm very independent, but to an extent, like not being forced to be alone all the time. But then on the other side of things, if I was living with someone, we probably would have butt heads so many times now that there would be a hole through the wall. So it's like there's no right answer, and each situation comes with its very unique challenges. And even if you're in a great relationship with your partner, significant other, your whoever you're married to, like whatever it is, even if you're in a great relationship, it's still going to be hard because you've never been forced to be together for this amount of time for so long. And that doesn't even take into account if you're in a relationship that was experiencing some problems, whatever those might be, before the quarantine. Like that's probably magnified 100-fold. And it's just like, I think a lot of people are dealing with not only a lot of emotions, but a lot of guilt during this time. Because if you are healthy and you multiple levels right here, right? If you're healthy, you're not in the hospital, if you don't have to work in the hospital, if you haven't lost your job, if fill in the blank, all these things, people feel bad about expressing the emotions, the grief that they have about their situation.
Yeah.
You could be like middle class, you could be upper middle class, like no matter where you are, you're going to be struggling right now for obviously very, very different reasons. But I think there's actually an article I read the other day that was talking about class guilt and depression during the pandemic. Is people are saying that they feel guilty expressing that I don't feel good right now because like I'm healthy. I'm not in the age bracket that's at most at risk. Like I still have my job, you know, like I still have a roof over my head and access to food and all these things. You can be grateful for having all of that, but you can still experience grief and acknowledge that this is really, really hard for everyone. Obviously, it's a different kind of hard on so many different levels, but that doesn't discount the fact that this is hard for everyone. And I would even say, and this is what a bunch of psychologists were saying in this article, is that pushing those emotions down is actually going to be a lot more detrimental to your long-term health, or even just not acknowledging them or not allowing yourself to acknowledge them is going to be really detrimental to not only your physical health, but to your mental health, both now and down the line.
Yeah, 100%. I think guilt is one of the biggest emotions that a lot of people are putting on because it's more familiar than the other emotions that are actually arising. And it was interesting in my Facebook group, quite a few weeks ago, I just sort of asked, I think it was like, how's everybody doing? Or, and the majority of the people in the group are at home, not working full time. And one of the women who is working full time made a comment of, I'm kind of jealous of everyone who's just at home and getting this, basically this holiday for themselves, this vacation to work around the house and work in their yard and just be with their families and their kids. I'm jealous of this. I have to work full time because I'm an essential service. And it made me realize that we never know what it's like for the other person, ever. Because I work from home and I have been struggling being at home all the time. And I have been having so many different emotions I haven't had before. So while my life may look really easy since I'm just at home and going for walks and listening to podcasts and cooking food, it might seem really dreamy, but there's so much emotion and energy that's processing through my body that it can be friggin' torture at times. And just like, it seems like hours just extend, but then at the same time, the days are gone and the days blend together. So I think, like, what I heard from what you're saying and what I've noticed is that the greatest thing that we can do is stop comparing ourselves. There is no need for any of us to feel like our emotions and our feelings are not valued or validated simply because of our situation. You are not a better person because you are not working, staying at home. You're not a better person because you are working. You're not a better person because you're homeschooling your kids really well. You're not a better person because you're not homeschooling your kids. I have friends who've got toddlers at home. Both her and her partner are working full-time, 8 hours a day from home. And they were trying to tell me that they felt guilty about how much Paw Patrol their kids were watching. I said, girl, are you kidding? Do not have any of that guilt right now. That is not fair. Yes, of course, it's maybe not the most ideal thing for your kids, but nor is a pandemic for all of us. And so just be kind and gentle with yourselves. And Dana, one of the things you said too about being in a relationship is, I totally agree with this. Any problems or issues that you had personally or that you've had with your partner are probably coming more so to the surface now. And I just want you to know, first of all, if you're struggling in that, we're just sending you love right now and we get it. This is not easy and it's okay that it's not easy. You will find your way through this in whatever way you're meant to, but also do your best to take the pressure off yourself, because the more pressure you put on yourself to just figure it out, we have to get through this and I can't stand you anymore, and you just keep putting pressure and pressure on you, it's going to make it harder and it's going to push your relationship further apart. So as much as you can, try to nourish your own emotions, your own feelings, your heart, your mind, take the pressure off, take the guilt off, and it will help serve you in all the areas of life, all the places.
Right. Well, speaking of putting pressure on ourselves and guilt and productivity and everything, like there's there's a whole new uh guilt productivity comparison trap that has come up in quarantine, when people who, whether they're working full-time or part-time or not working at all, they're like, oh my gosh, I need to do something to fulfill my time because otherwise the quarantine wasn't worth it. Or like, what did I do? What am I going to have to show at the end of this if I haven't repainted my house and grown an avocado tree and like tended to some unicorns, like, you know, whatever it is. And it's so, and you can,
I want all of those things.
I also want all of those things, but like, who has the time to do that? But it's like, you can see this everywhere, literally everywhere. It's like, just go on one piece of social media, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever you do. And the first ad you will see will be for a course that you should take during quarantine.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, this is a really cool opportunity if you have the time to do things that you don't make time for otherwise. If you've wanted to work on learning a new language, if you wanted to take an online cooking class, which is like so cool, right? But then acknowledging also that all of these things are freaking exhausting, and saying that, okay, this week I'm going to do 6 virtual happy hours, and I'm going to do a cooking class, and I'm going to do the great courses, and I'm going to paint a Picasso, and I'm going to do all these things. It's like you then start to feel bad because you've made this list of things for yourself that you would genuinely enjoy doing, but we don't take into account that just the fact that you are living and existing and surviving in this quarantine is freaking exhausting, mentally, emotionally, physically, no matter what your circumstance that you're living in is. And when you put all of those things on yourself and you should yourself, you say, I should be doing this. Like, even if you say, oh, I would love to do that, but in the back of your head, you're like, oh God, I got to do one of these things. Or like, I'm going to come out of this quarantine and people are going to be like, oh, what did you do? And I'm just going to have to say, oh, well, I just like drank and Netflix binged my way through the quarantine, which is like a perfectly normal response to what people are having right now. You feel like you're going to feel bad when you see that your neighbor painted their whole house and organized their whole library and did all of these things. And it's like, we all need to acknowledge that no matter what the comparison trap is, whether it's right now during quarantine with productivity, or if it's outside of quarantine and it's workouts and food and bodies, and don't even get me started on that because that is rampant during quarantine too. And it's like, people are like, oh, like no better time to like get in shape and lose weight. And like, I have all the time in the world. I might as well do a 3-hour home workout every day. It's like, all right, physiologically, let's talk about your stress response, because that's not going to be the best thing for you. And even just putting that pressure on yourself can be so detrimental to not only your mental health, in that you're feeling guilty all the time if you're not doing it, which don't worry, there are plenty of people out there that are making us feel guilty because of what they're doing, when it's really just a disordered coping mechanism. That's a whole nother conversation. But it's like learning to tune in and realize that, like, however you're dealing with this, your body is just surviving and adapting in the way that you best know how. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Like, there are many people that are going through these behaviors that outside of the quarantine, it would be like, ooh, that's a little bit questionable. But again, this is an extreme circumstance, and these are extreme behaviors that people are using to cope with this, because this is something that none of us have ever lived through before, unless you're in the Spanish influenza of like 1918, which unfortunately there aren't a lot of those people alive anymore. And so we can't get sage wisdom or advice from them. But even then, there was no technology back then. So it's a completely different ballgame.
Yeah, I think just the biggest thing is like, be gentle. Be gentle with yourself. I have literally had days where my face did not turn into the shape of a smile once. And I am a very expressive person with my face. And my husband has always said he knows exactly how I'm feeling by looking at my face. And yeah, that was hard for him. It's hard for him to see me so unhappy, because I'm generally a very positive, uplifted, happy person. But I also have been giving myself enough grace and asking for that grace from my family at the same time, saying, look, I need to be able to express this. I need to be able to not be okay. And I need you to not make me feel more guilty for it, because I'm doing enough of that myself. And I'm trying my best to release that. And one of the things that I feel most proud of during this quarantine, and we were talking about this a little bit earlier, Dana, is I almost beat Super Mario all the way to the very last Bowser castle. Now, unfortunately, I can't say I actually did. We had 2 teenagers here quarantined with us for a while, and now they're back to work, but they brought their Nintendo with them. We gamed hard. It was incredible. We would all gather around 4 p.m. and we would get our game on, and I'm proud of that. Because it felt good, because in the moment, that was the only thing that I wanted to do. And yeah, sure, I could have gone for another walk. I could have done a workout. I could have been prepping a super healthy meal. I could have been reading a book. There's a million things that I kind of wanted to do in terms of the shoulds. But instead, I did what felt good. I connected with my family. I had fun. I laughed. I acted like a teenager. I just let myself be in the energy of what was present for me at that moment. And that's okay. There's no label of what you're supposed to be or have accomplished or anything. There's none of that. None. Let it go. It is all self-inflicted. It is all your ego talking to you. It is all comparisonitis. It is just not necessary for your well-being, health, and happiness. You need to learn to just nourish and love yourself from where you are, not where you think you should be. Okay? And Deanna steps off her little soapbox.
Boom. Drop the mic and leave. Yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting to allow yourself to tune in and say, not what I think I should be doing right now, but what feels really good right now.
Mhm.
And then tune into that and acknowledge that there are going to be times when you feel super, super overwhelmed, and there's going to be different stages of overwhelm, different stages of energy, and you can have different feel good coping mechanisms for each of those different stages. This is something that I've been working through with my clients with. And I'm like, if you feel like a 10 on the overwhelm and stress scale, it is not time to open up a Brene Brown book, because that is heavy and it is not going to go well for you. You're not going to absorb anything. It's going to probably make you feel worse, because nobody wants to go into their deep, dark childhood secrets when they're already feeling so overwhelmed. At that point, maybe it's you turn off all screens and you stare at the wall, because that's the only thing you can think, the only thing you can like deal with right now.
Mhm.
And so I have thought about this and thinking about, okay, what do I need in different stages? And one thing that we were talking about, like on the Mario conversation, is like, I have been digging into things that I used to love in my childhood. So like reading fantasy stories, listening to the Harry Potter audiobooks. I went to my parents' house and found my old Game Boy Color. And I have also been playing Mario. I was playing Pokemon for a while. It's like doing things that can take you back to a period in your life that feel comforting and feel great for you, because all of the coping mechanisms that are like, oh, you can go for a walk and social distance and, you know, read a book and like read a self-help book. I'm like, oh my God, that just sounds exhausting right now. Like even going to the grocery store is exhausting right now. We were just talking before the call. I went to Costco yesterday and it was just I felt like I had just gone to an EDM concert when I got home. I was just like mentally, physically, emotionally exhausted, sensory overload. Like I couldn't even turn on the TV because I was just like, after I had gotten home, decontaminated myself and all of my groceries, I was like, that's it for the day. We're done. I can't
Yeah.
do anything else.
Yeah.
And that's when I just sat down and was reading a fantasy series for like 2 hours. And then I passed out because I also got new pillows. And that was the greatest thing that I did for myself yesterday.
That's amazing. Oh, that is amazing.
It's the little things.
And also just to what you were saying, just for some frame of reference for everyone, I have done house party calls with friends from all over the world. We have had a glass of wine together and played a game online while we're on video chatting. I've video chatted with Luke, my partner Luke, and his whole family, all his siblings, multiple times, like almost every night in the very beginning of quarantine. I have made sure that I am eating healthy meals. I've cooked delicious meals. I've also eaten cheesies and brownies and a lot of cookies. What I'm trying to say is I've done the things. I've done the things that are really good for you. Dixie and I would go for a 2-hour walk every single day. We have tons of property near us. We're on 3.2 acres. Plus we have a golf course and all of this space around us. You guys, I have such a privileged experience, and I still have faced the deepest, darkest depression I've ever felt. I want you to hear that. Regardless of the situation that you're in, you're allowed to have your feelings. You're allowed to feel the way you feel. And as soon as you try to pretend you're fine or allow yourself to feel guilty about the emotions that are actually true for you, that's when you're cutting yourself off from your own emotional resiliency. That's when you're cutting yourself off from actually feeling good. And like Dana said, just find something that feels okay or good. Like if you can't get all the way to good, then just okay. Like staring at a wall. I also had times of sitting in the sunroom that I have with the sun pouring down on me, just like staring mindlessly outside for like 2 hours. And you know what? I needed it, and that's okay. And I did the very best that I could to not feel guilty about that, because it did nourish me and it did help me. And that's what I needed in the moment. So whatever feels real and true for you as you're going through this, please let yourself have that. Please be kind to yourself. Please know that it's okay. And that's how we're going to get through this together.
Right. And I mean, just touching on like the mental health conversation for a little bit is I remember someone said to me one time and it like really stuck with me. I think it might have been when we were in school, and it was like, you don't need to have a reason to be anxious or depressed. Like, you don't have to have someone close to you doesn't have to die. You don't have to have a major life event to like have either of those things. It can just happen. It can be a biochemical imbalance, or it can just happen.
Mhm.
And that happens to people outside of quarantine. And now we're in this global trauma. You have more than enough reason to be experiencing whatever you're experiencing. And I will say, it's going to manifest for everyone in different ways. One thing it's kind of doing is it's illuminating what are your tendencies? Like, what emotions do you go to? What do you tend towards? Do you tend towards more depressive symptoms? Do you tend toward more anxiety symptoms, or both? It's kind of like, to bring in a poop metaphor here, like when people have IBS, do you tend more towards constipation or diarrhea, or is it both? Like, sorry, I'm a clinical nutritionist. It was going to come out, right? And a lot of people are having a lot of like health and digestive issues during this time, aside from all of the COVID stuff, right? Like, the anxiety and the mental health pieces that come into this also affect your whole body in a kind of way. When like a complete example from yesterday, when I came home and I felt I had total sensory overload, and I was just like, I need to be like a turtle right now and go into a shell and not stare at any screens. I just cuddled with my dog and I read and I went to bed, because that was almost too much.
Mhm.
So just, give yourself some space, and then also give yourself some grace that, like, whatever you're going through right now, again, your body is not failing you
Mhm.
in any way. Your mind is not failing you. It's just adapting and it's doing its best. And however it's doing that is okay, and we will figure it out eventually. But you also don't need to figure it out. You don't need to do anything to fix it. You don't need to redo your whole house so you feel like your quarantine was worth it.
Yeah.
That's not what this is about. It's actually making the problem worse, if we're being honest.
Yeah. This is not the time to be doing all the things. This is the time to be tending to your heart. This is the time to be tending to the fear, because especially if you're someone who's watching the news every day, there's a lot of fear going on. And so you're going to be, you're energetically receiving that emotion from what you are watching. And if you're in any way empathic, and by the way, I am like a 10 out of 10 as an empath. And I've really been like noticing how heightened that is for myself during this quarantine. If you're in any way empathic, you're going to feel that even more so. So know that know that you're okay. Just just that. Just know that you're okay. And something else that's really important, that feels really important to say right now, is if you're someone who's still listening to this and you're like, I've kind of been okay. Like, this quarantine hasn't been the worst for me. I haven't had deep depression. I haven't had anxiety. Like, I kind of enjoy it. That's okay too. And don't feel like you have to hide that just because other people are going through struggles. While I have been in this like dark, heavy cloud at times, there have been friends of mine who are thriving. One of my friends is making the most money she's ever made. She's working her butt off, getting tons of overtime, loving her life. Of course, there's some things she'd change, but she feels great. I can hold space in my heart to celebrate her while at the same time working through what I'm going through. And I think that it's important that we allow all of us to do that too. So if you are thriving in this quarantine, I just want you to know that that's okay and that we see you as well. And I just for a second, Dana, want to talk about just a brief second what it's like to be a business owner during a global pandemic. Could we just talk about this for just a minute?
It is a living hell.
Oh my goodness. It is so scary. It's so scary.
Yeah. My first response to this was fear. Um, like, fear on many levels, obviously, right? Fear for my personal safety, fear for my family, fear that, because I'm in the younger age bracket where it's like, okay, I do have an underlying health condition of celiac disease, but like, as far as other things go, like, I'm a generally healthy person. And even though this virus doesn't discriminate like who it goes for, like, I'm not in the high risk bracket. The biggest thing that I was afraid of was giving it to someone else if I had it and it was dormant. But then also, like, what the hell am I going to do about my business? Because when you're in a service-based business, no matter what that is, if you're a yoga instructor, if you're a gym owner, if you're, a barber, if you're any of these things, you depend on your clients for income. And of course, there's going to be a slowdown in clients because everyone is terrified of spending any money right now because because people are furloughed and people have been laid off. And, in America, we've had how many million people apply for unemployment, like the highest of history in any time. And so, of course, there's that fear time. And when you are in a service-based business that's a non-essential business, people don't feel the need to spend money on it, even if it's something that they really do need.
Yeah.
So like the work that I do with body image and relationship with food and stuff, people need help right now.
Oh yeah.
But I'm also not going to be the person be like, hey, I'm taking new clients if you want to work with me, because that feels really shitty. And I don't want to be that person who's like, oh, well, you can spend your money on me and support a small business and yada, yada. And like, yeah, if you did choose to work with me, that would be supporting a small business. But the way that I said it was supposed to be really flamboyant because that's not the way that I would ever do that. And it's very hard because you want to remind people that if you need help and if you have the means and if this is something that you feel like you have the emotional capacity to work on right now, I am available to help you. But
Yes.
at the same time, it's like, but I don't want to push that on people because I don't want to be insensitive. But then at the same time, it's like, but I need to support myself too. So
Yep.
you're caught not only between a rock and a hard place, but it's like a rock, a hard place, a river that you're going to drown in. Like the oxen have just drowned behind you on the Oregon Trail. Like everything there's too many emotions. You like can't feel everything. And then when you do the work that I do with people that have a history of eating disorders or disordered eating, even when I do see clients, I know it's really helpful to them, but it is even more so than usual emotionally exhausting. And when you do very emotional work with clients, you have to get very good at compartmentalizing things so that you don't take, if you see 5 or 6 clients a day and you took all of their problems home with you, you would explode.
Yeah.
So in non-COVID times, I had gotten a lot better about, okay, these are my work hours. When I'm done seeing my clients, I'm going to think about them and all of their problems and stuff during work hours tomorrow when I'm done. Those boundaries have completely disappeared during this time. So not only am I experiencing all of the emotions that everyone is experiencing via the news and the panic and, me, myself, am I going to get sick? If I go see my family, am I going to get them sick? Is it going to be my fault? I'm afraid of getting other people sick. It's also like, is my business going to be open in 6 months? Am I going to have to move back in with my parents if it fails?
Yeah.
Am I not going to be able to afford rent? Like, do I have to apply for unemployment? Like, it's hell on wheels.
Yeah. Yeah. Girl, I am like 100% in alignment with everything you said. Let's just take a breath. Everyone just take a nice deep breath and let it go.
I think I need like 80 of those, which is why I have been meditating every single morning. But that's the other thing is, like you were saying before, is you do all the things
Mm-hmm.
that normally make you feel better.
Mm-hmm.
And when they still don't work, you're like, what
Yeah.
now? I've
Yeah.
done everything and I still feel shitty.
Yeah. 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 It's so bizarre. It's such a bizarre experience. And I've even found that for me, my meditations, I'm not able to go as well. I wasn't able to go as deep as I normally would. And that was frustrating. And as a spiritual mentor, as someone who teaches others about spirituality and consciousness, it's very, it feels almost fraudulent for me to not be going as deep as I know that I could be and to still be showing up to support my people. And so my experience was really similar to you, Dana, in that I just held off of all marketing, basically. I just stopped offering anything in terms of, if people found me and they reached out to me, they could become clients, and that happened, and that was incredible. But I was not promoting any of my coaching programs. I was not promoting anything other than just holding space. And so I started going into my Facebook group, and I called it message from the heart or spiritual whispers. And I would just go on Facebook Live in whatever position I was in like sometimes it was like upside down on my couch, like, hey, you guys, how you doing? And just creating connection and holding space for all of us to have the emotions that we have. But I like everything that you said, Dana, I felt that too. I've had deep moments of thinking like, well, that's it. I might as well just, there's no point in me coaching anymore. I'll just close my business. It's fine. We'll just like, I'll do this instead. Or I'm just going to stay at home. My husband will take care of me. Everything's fine. And then other moments of thinking, I can't imagine my life without the work that I do because it's such a soul and heart connection. It's so fulfilling. And it's been very complex. It's been very complex to have not only personal emotions of everything you're talking about, Dana, of worry about my own health and my family's health and all of these pieces, but then putting on that layer of not only just like, am I financially sound, but is my business going to get to keep growing? Do I get to keep like moving towards these beautiful big visions that I have for myself? And how is that going to shift? And what's that going to look like? And is my retreat going to happen? And am I ever going to have a new client again? And all of the things. And the reason I wanted to bring that up is I know there's at least a few of you who either are business owners or maybe you're managers in some role with your work. And I want you to know that there are other people that are feeling the same way that you are. And no one is immune to this experience. Nobody is immune to the emotions and the fears that arise from going through a global pandemic and wondering what is going to happen in the stock market and the economy. It's all a part of it. And hopefully from just being here and listening to this audio or watching this video and being with Dana and I, just know that you're not alone. And as soon as we can take our energy from being like in the fear, in the worry, in the doubt, in the anxiety, the moment we can open up to realize we're not alone in that, it takes some of the pressure off. It's not going to alleviate everything, but it's going to help you to realize, oh, well, if they're feeling that too, and I'm feeling that, then there's probably someone else who's feeling that. So then all of us are in this together. So if we all crash, we crash together. Or when we make it through, we get to make it through together. So I just want you to remember that you're not alone, that your feelings are valid, that you are not alone, that we're all in this together. And we're just doing what we can day by day, minute by minute of what's going to bring us either joy and goodness or just at least feeling okay.
Again, going back to the first thing I said, hanging in there and doing the best I can. You know, that's the like the optimal thing that you can even strive for right now is just, I'm just hanging in there. And you could be hanging by a thread, but you're still hanging in there. And just think about like, what are the things that can bring you joy? And thinking about, like I mentioned before, what are the different levels of things that can bring you joy, right? If you feel like, wow, I actually feel pretty good today. Maybe you can color in a coloring book, you can paint, you can do something creative, do a puzzle. Or if you're feeling like, ooh, need to go into a hole, like there are other different coping mechanisms during that time that might not necessarily be able to make you feel good if that seems like a roadblock, but going for things that can just make you feel a little bit better in this moment, and that's the best you can do, that is fine.
Yep. 100% doing what you can in the moment. And this won't always be accessible when you're in, like, if you're feeling emotions quite heavily, but as much as you can, as often as you can, move your body. Move your body, move your body, move your body. Remember that we are all made up of molecules of energy. That's what we are. When we move our body, we shift up that energy. We help things to flush out. We help to support our organs. We help to support our mental health by just letting the energy and the blood flow. Moving your body doesn't have to be doing like an online CrossFit workout. Moving your body could be putting on your favorite song and just dancing around for 2 minutes. Moving your body could be sitting cross-legged and just letting your neck roll side to side. Moving your body could just be stretching while you're watching TV in the evening and eating a bag of chips. Like, it can be whatever you want it to be, but just as much as you can, move your body because it helps support your progress towards feeling a little bit better than you do in this moment.
Exactly.
So Dana, let's just see, what would you say is like, this is so silly, but what's like your number one tip to offer to someone who is feeling the way that you have been feeling during quarantine? What is something that you would offer to them to take away, to do, to whatever it is?
Give yourself a break. So one thing that I have been doing is The same way that I will schedule in appointments with clients or I will schedule in podcast recordings or anything, I have been scheduling in downtime and establishing hard limits for when I'm actually going to be working and when I'm not going to be working. So that, because if you are an entrepreneur or if you're working from home, which, hey, is everyone right now, it's really easy to feel guilty about not working even in non-normal business hours. So if you, or during regular business hours, if you're feeling so depleted and it's like 2, 3 p.m. and you're like, oh my God, I just can't do this anymore. If you don't have any more work meetings, if you don't have any more calls, and especially if you work for yourself, it's okay to shut off for the day and say, I'm going to get started tomorrow at 7 a.m. or whenever it is. And that has been super helpful for me because I do suffer from like a lot of, I guess suffer isn't the right word, but I do have a lot of like entrepreneurs guilt of like, oh, I should be working. Oh, I should be, we talked about quarantine guilt and productivity. Like that is massive for entrepreneurs right now. And of course, moms and, everything like that, which again, whole nother conversation. I feel like this conversation could spur 20 different ones, right? But yeah, just allowing yourself to take a break and even just scheduling those throughout the day. So if doing like 2 or 3 hours of work seems really daunting, at 2 hours or at 2.5 hours, set an alarm on your phone, be like, time for you to take a break. I don't care what you do, but you're not working. Maybe you go for a walk, maybe you sit there and you watch like an episode of something or whatever it is that you do. I know everyone has certain things where you start doing that thing and you're just like, oh my God, I feel so much better. One of those things for me is listening to the Harry Potter audiobooks. So the other day when I was super, super stressed and everything was building, I was like, oh my God, what do I need? And I was like, that is what I need. And no joke, I carry a lot of stress and tension in my shoulders. I think I just made up a new word, stress and tension. But as soon as I put my headphones on, I started walking my dog and I put, I think the third book on, I was just like, oh, like shoulders came down. I was like, everything is going to be fine. I don't know that, but in this moment, everything is going to be okay. Like I can't speak for tomorrow. I can't speak for a month from now, but focusing on where I am right now and just trying to be okay in this moment is the best thing that I can do for me.
That's beautiful advice. And just a point with that, even pre-COVID, we had no idea what tomorrow brings. Like we have never actually had certainty ever. We think we do, like we make plans. Sometimes they come to fruition. Sometimes they don't. But just a reminder, we've never had certainty ever. And this is just different because it's laced with a lot of fear, especially around physical immunity. But we haven't had certainty. So as you're saying, Dana, like, yeah, what in this moment brings joy or peace or calm? What in this moment brings my shoulders down and allows me to relax and do that? I'm going to ask myself the same question. My suggestion that has tremendously supported me, and I know will tremendously support you as well. And it's not as like one of the should things, even though it may seem like quite a healthy thing to do, but get yourself outside every day. And even for those of you who are in apartments, then put your head out the window, open the window and sit by the window and breathe the air, or go outside and find a bench to sit on. If I have taken walks in pouring rain, I have been taking walks in snow and we still had snow and ice and slush. And it's just so valuable to connect with the rhythm of nature, because nature doesn't care that there's a pandemic. It's a human thing. It's not an earth thing. And when you get into the cycles and the rhythms of nature, especially when for those of us who are in the Northern Hemisphere coming into springtime, you get to hear the birds singing, you get to see growth on trees and in the ground. It reminds you that there is harmony still. It's just looking different than it did before. And so coming into nature, coming into fresh air, coming into those cycles is really, really valuable. And not all of you will have this ability, but as I mentioned, I have a lot of space around me. I've chosen to live in a very tiny town for that reason. And sometimes, like normally I'd go for a walk with Dixie for about a half hour and it'd feel great. I'd feel grounded, reconnected. Okay, here we go. My walks have been 2 to 3 hours because it takes me that long to get to a place where I feel rooted and anchored in that I'm okay. And that's okay. And that's okay that my dog Dixie loves it, but just a reminder that just be with the emotion that you have, connect yourself with nature and just the fresh air as much as possible. And We will. You guys, I have full, complete belief we will make it through this in whatever way we are supposed to. I always fully, truly believe that the universe has our back and that this is just a part of our journey of being here. And the more that we can anchor into the love that is in our heart and do our best to bring ourselves to a place of somewhat neutrality, of somewhat feeling good, when we can make that our priority, when we can support ourselves in that way, that's what's going to help us make it through this together. 100%.
Exactly. Now stop feeling bad about yourself.
Go find some joy, huh? Amazing. Thank you, Dana, for having this conversation. It's always just such a delight to spend this time with you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I always love having these conversations. And now I'm emotionally exhausted, so I'm going to go check out.
Yeah, girl, yeah. Okay, thanks everyone for listening. We have so much love for you. Mwah. We'll talk to you soon.